It is, unfortunately, it is not only déjà vu, but it is, which is always painful for a Georgian citizen who has suffered Russian occupation and bombardments. For sure there is this emotional tie, but it's even further. We are concerned about Russia's foreign policy towards its neighborhood and its attitude towards its neighbor, which is described as the Russia's privileged interest attitude with the neighbors, and which is exposed through aggressive occupation actions, and the attitude that these actions are legitimately policing the neighborhood.
So you've heard those arguments before, presumably in 2008?
We did. We are hearing this Russian foreign policy, and we don't accept this Russian foreign policy. We believe that nations, be big or small in its economic, military or territorial capacities, should cooperate based on goodwill, on international law, on respect of each other and respect of each other's interests. And that's how we want to deal with our neighbors. That's how we are dealing with our neighbors, but it's different from Russia.
One of the arguments is that Russia, Vladimir Putin, has a right to defend the interests of Russian people across your part of the world. That would include Georgia.
This is a very stretched argument. Georgia is not a country, or Ukraine is not a country. We are not the countries that want to have any animosity, neither with our own societies nor with our neighbors. So what we are looking for is to start discussing exactly what all of us need. How, through our bilateral relationships, we can bring better solutions for our citizens, including Russian citizens.
We in the West, in the US, in Europe, it's very easy for us. We know which side our governments are on. I often think that for people in your part of the world, in Georgia and the countries around it, they're almost forced to pick a side in some ways between looking towards Russia, looking towards Europe and the US. Do you think Georgia and countries around you are forced to pick a side?
Well, we've witnessed harsh Russian hand when it's up to our free choice. We are not forced into Europe or NATO. It's our decision, it's our vision for our future development to integrate ourselves into European Union and NATO. But we, Georgia, as well as Ukraine, as well as Moldova, have been punished for this freedom and for this free choice. We see that, but that doesn't change us.
Talk to me a little bit about China as well. Georgia is in a fantastic position geopolitically, right at that cornerstone between East and West for China's new Silk Road. You mentioned that. You're, I believe, developing ports that would be capable of exporting to China. Where do you see your relationship with China? Do you think it's something that might pull Georgia a little bit further east than perhaps west?
Well, as I've noted, we started the feasibility study and negotiations will be starting on the free trade agreement, and we believe with China. And we are very much engaged and supportive of the Silk Road project and the development of and unfolding of the Silk Road project through Georgian route as well. As you have noted, we have a very important geostrategic role of uniting two continents, and I think we'll be dragged nowhere. We'll be where we are, and we will develop and will broaden our relationships with East and West simultaneously. As I have noted, we have a free trade agreement with Europe, and that's the area where we will, in the formats and standards of which we are developing our economies. And China, I'm happy to see that our Chinese partners do completely acknowledge the crucial role that Georgia is playing in context of the Silk Road.
Does this mean if you develop these transit routes that people in China can eventually enjoy Georgian wine? Because I'm sure they don't see much of it.
Well, I believe that there is quite a growing recognition of Georgian wine and mineral waters, which was championing on the Soviet market, but this was a relatively closed market, and we were absolutely dominating in this respect in Soviet economy, and we were very well known, and the brands are still remembered. I believe it's gradually that our European and our Eastern partners are starting to acknowledge a unique flavor of Georgian wines, and I believe in China, gradually this interest is growing. I've had several occasions where it was noted that gradually Chinese consumers sort of discovered possibilities of Georgian wines and mineral waters.